Hey, what's up guys? Tyler here with Secureteam. Well, NASA has come out with, some would say, a major announcement, having discovered organic matter, or in other words, the building blocks of life on planet Mars. So in this new announcement, NASA has revealed that the Curiosity rover has found organic matter preserved on Mars in a discovery that could suggest that there was once ancient alien life on the planet, and that these molecules that they found represent the suggestion that Mars has been far more alive than we ever knew. Experts say that the findings should propel us to look for conclusive evidence of alien life living on the planet, going further saying, quote, "With these new findings, Mars is telling us to stay the course and keep searching for evidence of life. We are confident that our ongoing and planned missions will unlock even more breathtaking discoveries on the red planet." And so many of you may be asking, well, what did they find on the surface? And I want you guys to stay tuned for this whole video because we have a lot to go through. Suffice it to say, there has already been evidence of life on Mars, and I fully believe, as do thousands of others, that not only was there an ancient, I'm talking civilized, race on the planet, but there may be something there as we speak. But we'll get to that more in a second. So the new announcement is the result of two new studies that reveal a lot of new details about how methane exists on the planet. And what they found is methane trapped in the mud on Mars that is more than 3 billion years old, not to mention the releasing of gas today that, as one NASA spokesman said, quote, could be related to life in the subsurface, aka underground. And these new methane observations provide one of the most compelling cases for present-day life. Now, as many of you know, on Earth, most methane is produced by biological sources, and scientists have always been long baffled by the discovery of a significant amount of methane all over Mars. And besides finding methane in mud, finding it rising up from the surface, we all know that there's water on Mars. We have time-lapse footage of this water seeping up through the mud. Well, in another research study they published simultaneously, they showed that these organic molecules have also been found embedded in ancient rock on Mars. After the rover took samples of them, heated them up so they could analyze it, and the molecules were released. And that the data showed there is certain matter on Mars similar to the kind of organic rich rock found on Earth. And so many of you are wondering, what do I make of all this? Well, I think this is nothing more than more of NASA drip-feeding us information that we already knew to be true. If you followed the channel or you've studied this research, you'll know that all of these space agencies have a habit of just slowly drip-feeding stuff that they've known about for 30, 40, 50 years. And after showing you guys what I'm about to show you, I would think that there's no way that NASA couldn't know that there definitely was and may very well still be life on Mars, because if we can put together the compilation that you're about to see, then just imagine what NASA has and what they haven't released and what they haven't been able to edit out before selling it to the public. And so today, I'm going to show you guys some photographs and some footage taken by the probes currently orbiting Mars, snapping satellite photographs, as well as pictures taken by the various rovers down on the surface that will prove, at the very least, that if Mars isn't inhabited right now, it certainly was at one point in the past. And we're going to do that by starting off with a video that I posted a couple of years back. See, I've been studying this stuff for years, and I've documented it many times here on the channel, but some of it is so old that I know a lot of you, especially new subscribers, have never gotten to see it. So I want to start this video off with a video I posted back in 2016, giving you guys a bit of a taste of some of the artificial, the anomalous, and the mysterious that have been found on Mars and that would indicate that there is much more to the planet than we're being told. And this video begins after we had recently discovered a 600-foot object protruding from the Martian surface. We have got a very interesting finding, a new image from the surface of planet Mars that would look to show an unidentified crashed object partially dug into the Martian dirt. So the image in question here, here's the full zoomed out view of this, and I'll put the link to this down in the video description. You guys can go and check it out. So here we are, and the object in question you will find down here at the bottom. So let's go ahead and zoom in on this object. First thing you'll probably notice is that this object is definitely a three-dimensional structure. How do we know this? Well, we can see the edges protruding from it, and we can see the shadow of the object being cast down on the surface below it. And to the right of the object, we have what looks like a sort of a skid mark, but we have this displacement of the soil, as if the object had careened across the surface. Another interesting thing to note is that this object is completely by itself. I mean, it's sitting in the middle of this vast desert. I mean, there's nothing else around it. So just the fact that it's there is strange, and it's obviously not your typical circular crater. And from what I can see, this object definitely has what almost looks like a heart shape to it. And it's partially sticking out of the dirt here. And on the top here, we have what looks like a dome, some sort of domed structure. Again, three-dimensional casting shadows. And, you know, that's one of the main things we look at when determining whether something is actually a three-dimensional object, because the sunlight, reflections, the shadows, those are all very telling. And it's certainly not the first time that we have found similar objects, structures, UFOs, crash sites on Mars. In fact, we have a multitude of visual evidence pointing to these structures being scattered all over the planet. And so we are going to go through some of the best findings on the planet Mars of these anomalous structures, whether it be crash sites, UFOs, artificial looking structures, you name it. We are going to show you the best that we have, and by the end, hopefully you'll be able to make up your mind and see a pattern here. So let's go ahead and get started. And we'll just go through these images one by one, just kind of giving a brief description of each. So because this new image here is sort of being deemed what looks like some sort of crash site, we'll go ahead and start with some other intriguing crash sites on the planet Mars, starting with this one here. This is a very infamous image. Here we see what can only be described as a crash site in the truest sense of the word. We have this large carved out path here, dug into the soil, at the end of which we have a very clear as day, circular, saucer-shaped UFO dug into the Martian dirt, the front end of which is completely covered, as you would expect it to be in a crash like this. And in terms of crash sites and, you know, what we've seen on Earth, and all of the times you think back to seeing, you know, a crash site anywhere, this is basically what it looks like. And whatever this object is, it has some force to it, because you can see just how long this dugout path is, stretching back across the terrain. If not that, some sort of object that is possibly mining the surface of Mars, digging into the soil for another unknown reason, but an amazing finding. Here we have another one of these sort of perfect carved out paths that you can see is very similar to the one we just showed you. However, when you attempt to find the object that created this path, there is none to be found. So what some have said is that whatever created this, if it was some sort of crashed aircraft, that obviously it was repaired or undamaged and was able to leave the area. And again, another very uniformly created dugout indentation. This is a very interesting image, and we have a few things going on here. However, I want you to train your attention to where we have this circular object, once again, that looks to be partially buried or dug into the surface. You know, it's interesting because as we go through these images, you will definitely start to see a pattern. A lot of structures that have been found on Mars are partially buried, or I guess you could say camouflaged into the surface. So many of these aren't necessarily crash sites. Another one of my favorites, originally discovered by Richard Hoagland, of a massive egg-shaped UFO sitting on the edge of a cliff. Here is the original image. I will put the link to this down in the video description. We'll go ahead and zoom in here. And you'll notice just on the edge of this cliff, we have a very reflective, three-dimensional, saucer-shaped structure. The sun is reflecting off of one side of it. The other side is in shadow. Definitely a domed structure of some sort. As I said, one of my favorites. And again, it goes back to it may not be an aircraft, it may be. But with the severe weather on Mars, dust storms, what have you, it would be perfectly rational to think that many of these craft would be covered in Martian dust, especially if these installations have been there for any extended period of time. So, speaking of domed objects, here's another favorite of ours. Another reflective, black, domed object, again on the edge of a cliff that looks to be, it definitely looks to be buried or situated very securely down into the soil. We can see some soil displacement where, again, we see this sort of reflective metallic top. We see the sunlight reflecting off of it. Here's the same image with a little bit more enhancement to bring out the detail of the structure. And if you'll notice on the left here, we have what looks like a porthole, a window, or some sort of entrance that very well may lead underground. We spoke earlier about these underground tunneling systems. You're seeing those here, where we have these glass tubes that would seem to stretch, wrap, move through cracks that have been exposed. And in some of these photographs, we can actually see a metallic circular object moving through the tunnel. You're seeing that image here. And you can clearly see this metallic orb, again, reflecting sunlight. So it's highly reflective material, whatever it is, and it does look metallic. So we have a very infamous image of a light source that was captured a couple years back. We'll go ahead and zoom in here, where we had this very bright white light that was seen coming up from the surface, captured by the Mars rover. To this day, still unexplained. NASA has no idea what it is not even attempting to tell us or give us a good excuse as to what this is. Here we have what has been called the Disney World Dome, due to its resemblance to the silver dome that you'll find at Epcot Center, where here we can see it's perfectly situated within this crater. Again, partially buried. Here is a side-by-side comparison where we're looking at the Scott South Polar Station, where we have a man-made object here on Earth, and look how similar, almost identical. Here you're seeing a three-dimensional view, and it's a beautiful piece of evidence. Here we have, yet again, another very similar saucer to the one that we just showed you. Once again, sitting by itself, no other objects even remotely similar to this, around it. That's another dead giveaway. And we can see this pronounced three-dimensional saucer with this dome on the top and this elongated shadow being cast by the object on the surface. Here we have yet again another favorite, probably one of the most clearest that I've seen of one of these saucers, again, sitting on a cliffside. So even though I'm calling these saucers, these very well may be buildings of some sort that are simply in a domed or saucer shape, where, again, we have this circular metallic saucer shape with what look like these long rectangular black windows wrapping around the rim. Here is an enhanced version where we've colored in the terrain, leaving the object here in black and white, just to give you a better idea. And again, we notice sunlight reflecting off of this rim. It's a great indication that this object is metallic in nature. Here we have another rover image of another just unknown anomalous object sitting on the surface. This one could be a rock, although due to the uniform shape of it, I definitely thought it was worth a look here. We'll go ahead and zoom in. Here we have some more UFOs that were captured flying over Mars. So not only do we have objects on the surface, but many instances where we have found these saucer-shaped, and not just saucers, but triangular, cigar, what have you, flying over the surface, sitting in the background almost as if they are watching the rover as it moves across their planet. Here we have, a very clear saucer shape here. We'll go ahead and zoom in. Again, we have a long cylindrical center here. We have a dome on the bottom and a dome on the top. So, classic saucer shape. Here we have yet another craft, similar in shape, but this time white in color, possibly due to the sun reflecting off of it. We have found evidence of objects that have been moving around on Mars, objects that do not belong to us. Here is one of those very pictures where we see multiple tracks being made by something across the surface. Now, these tracks are actually very far away. So this image was taken from a very high altitude looking way down into a valley, and we see this first set of tracks that almost look like vehicle tracks stretching across, and then we have another track curving up with an object at the end of it. Here is an enhanced version of the same image just to give us some more detail. And if you'll notice here to the right where we have circled, we have what may be the object that has created this main pair of tracks here. Here we have a very mysterious image that was found recently of what looks like an object that is self-illuminating itself, or illuminating the surface, almost as if it's shining a light onto the Martian surface. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. And again, like many of these images, we have a barren, empty Martian desert, nothing around, and then we'll have another one of these artificial-looking objects sticking out like a sore thumb that definitely do not look to belong. And this object, it's definitely much harder to make out. But it does have a very strange, artificial-looking shape to it. And again, look at the light coming from this object shining down on the surface here, and is only coming from this UFO here. Okay, so now first of all, hopefully many of you will forgive me for how I sounded back in 2016. I didn't have as good of a mic. I wasn't as good as a talker as I am today. I'm still not really, but you have an idea here of some of the, we'll say, vehicles that have been discovered on Mars. Not only vehicles, but the domes, what appear to be buildings, crash sites, what have you, evidence that would show something happened on Mars. We have a lot of these ancient relics scattered amongst the surface. Now, there was another video that I posted where we had discovered one of the most bombshell, in my opinion, pieces of evidence that Mars may have been once inhabited by the people of Earth. There's a theory that's been going around for years that, well, Mars was just like Earth, and it's very possible that something happened to Mars that created this mass migration from Mars to planet Earth. And what led us to believe that? Well, it was the discovery of an artificial formation that was damn near identical to another artificial structure found on planet Earth. And you're seeing those two structures here side by side. Now, the structure that you're seeing on the right was created in ancient Japan. It's called the Kufan Tomb, and you can still find it today in Japan. You can find it on Google Earth, and it takes this sort of keyhole shape. And so when we found what appeared to be an almost identical, if not identical, structure on Mars, matching precisely, despite having some years of weathering, obviously, well, you guys look for yourselves and tell me that that is a coincidence. So speaking of these artificial structures that, in my opinion, are proof of life, okay? We're searching for proof of life on Mars. That is what we have always been searching for since we started looking into the planet. So what is proof of life? Well, proof of life would be artificial structures, things that would signify or show hallmarks of living civilization, monuments, monoliths. And so to end out today's video, I'm going to show you some further images of the planet Mars and things that have been found down on the surface. I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to let you guys watch it for yourselves. I don't think that I need to narrate every single photograph, and I think that you guys can make up your opinion just by seeing them. And by the end of this video, with everything you've seen, truly ask yourselves if you believe everything that NASA has been telling us, and that Mars is nothing more than a dusty, old, empty planet.